Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigor Mortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have, continuing our trek to the end of Ichor Fall, History Lesson. So, History Lesson is on the Ichor Falls submitted section of their website, ichorfalls.com. At first, it looked like it was just another one that was anonymously placed in by the admin. However, looking into the comment section, I believe this story was written by Xavier Brentwood, who was down in the comments thanking somebody about their the comments and critiques on the story. So I am 95% sure this is the person that wrote the story.
Yeah, because as with all Ichor Fall stories, the author is never actually cemented on the story itself.
Yeah, it's just admin posted this. Yeah.
Is it for immersion purposes? I don't remember.
No, it's not for any of that, I don't think. I think it's just it's probably just a default setting of the the website itself, the actual engine itself, and then maybe Kris Straub or whoever runs the Ichor Falls website itself. I assume it's Kris Straub, but it might be somebody else. Just at this point in the history of the internet, they just didn't bother crediting the authors necessarily.
Or it's just everyone sends the stories into him through his email or whatever, and then he puts them up on his website using his account. Hence why it's all admin.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning. Yeah, but it is weird that a lot of them they just maybe it's just they themselves post the story anonymously or send it to them anonymously, but it just seems kind of weird.
Well, on Creepypasta whatever, you would make an account on that and then post it, and that's how your name gets tied to the story. Except
that in recent years, they've been actually stamping down on actually putting crediting the author by or credited to ... when they can find
regards to Ichor Falls.
Not Ichor Falls, but to other creepypastas. There's a lot of archived creepypastas on the Creepypasta wiki. .fandom.com that have at the end they've added in credited to this person because they were able to find the person who actually wrote the creepypasta. So it might just be a product of the time of the internet, where crediting somebody wasn't entirely wasn't a priority or wasn't always in the kind of the headspace.
Yeah, it'd be a good way to do this. I know we're delaying the friggin' intro.
It's fine. Tune in next time when we discuss the morality and trends changing in the copyright world of creepypastas.
Yeah, we're totally going to do that. So a way to do it without having to change the infrastructure of everything, of how it all works, is just when the story gets posted, the first comment is by admin saying this story is credited to so-and-so.
Yeah, that would also, that would definitely help.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why it took us till the end of all of Ichor Fall to actually
finally address this. Hey, we got there. It took a couple of years, but we got there.
Yeah.
All right, so back to the story at hand, Ichor Falls History Lesson by Xavier Brentwood. Let's go into the initial recommendations before we dive into the rundown and our expanded reasoning for our recommendations. And I will go first, as usual. I'm going to recommend this story.
I'm going to not recommend this story.
Okay.
And of course, I will be partially recommending this story.
Of course. All right, so let's dive into this story and find out why we're
running the gambit on all of our.
Yeah. So starting with the rundown here. So Nair, because I don't believe we ever get their name.
I don't think so.
Enters a carnival tent exhibition with many other people as a busker goes on a very dramatic retelling of the historically oppressed poor people at the hands of the rich, but contrasting how how full of life the poor are compared to the rich in their opulence. As Nair travels from constructed scene to scene within the tent, the scenes are like a tavern, and then like the inside of a poor family's home, and then the inside of like a rich family or like a rich like estate kind of place. They're all separated by like curtains and curtained walls and stuff, and the busker kind of like does a spiel and then leads the crowd into the next scene and stuff like that. As this is going on, Nair begins to realize, unlike the rest of the people, that the mannequins, I do in quotes, of each exhibit are either trapped or dead people on display. For example, in the poor family's house scene, he notices that the woman in the middle of a group of women that are like knitting, her eyes are moving around and like have life in them, even though like seems to be trapped inside her own body, or like there's something wrong with her body that's like keeping her trapped. And he even notices that her mouth has been stitched shut, so she can't talk. And then when they go into the room with the opulent feast of the rich people, all the bodies there, like all the mannequins, are just dead people, it seems. And there's like a perfumed aroma that is like covering up the scent of death and rot. And the busker, the guy who's like giving the spiel about like this whole like dramatic retelling of this historical event stuff, seems to be in on it, as he keeps looking at Nair, who like Nair realizes that the busker realizes that Nair knows. Everybody got that?
Sure, why not?
So Nair tries to find a way to escape, perhaps even going back to that woman that was trapped in the poor family scene, but slips into the space between the curtained off exhibits and comes upon a closed door with a small curtained hole in it. He sticks his head through it, because YOLO, only to find his head unknowingly in the grasp of a guillotine, in front of a crowd of onlookers during the French Revolution. Nair tries to get his head out, but the busker is suddenly behind him in the curtained off area and holding him in place, while going on a spiel about how Nair was destined for this, or like this is he was meant to be here in this place with his head in the guillotine. And then Nair hears the blade come down. Fin. So after that, I suppose we'll move on to everyone tolerates the Grime Inquisitions. At this point, I've got two, so I'm going to start with this one here. I moved with the crowd out of the summer evening's heat into the carnival show tent, into a space well lit and decorated, a tavern scene, as the busker continued his patter. So this bit here is the first time we actually get Nair talking, or like kind of narrating the story, after a section at the beginning of the story where it's actually the busker going on his diatribe and stuff like that. And this might be a nitpick, but I honestly kind of wish that there was something more separating the busker's spiel at the beginning, which is like multiple lines, and like that they're all spaced out and stuff like that, and then it cuts immediately to this, like to the narrator after that, like moving with a crowd into the evening, or like out of the evening heat into the carnival show tent. And when I first read it, I honestly like kept reading it like the busker.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like to give you an example, it's like under the folds of this tent you will find we have spared no expense, left no stone unturned, no egg unbroken, to bring you the most modern and advanced display of man's progress. I moved with the crowd out of the summer's evening's heat into the carnival show tent, into a space well lit and decorated, a tavern scene, as the busker continued with his pattern. Oh. Okay. Like,
Did you get that far in before you realized?
Basically, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
If I'm being honest, it was like totally like I saw like that it was like mentioning the busker in the third person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As soon as it said like I moved with the crowd, I kind of figured it wasn't him.
Yeah, I was the goofus in this one, I guess.
Oh, don't
Um,
worry, I'm being way more goofus than you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like I just kind of wish like like honestly if the whole like because like how many 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 at least like 20 plus lines that are all like kind of most of them are spaced out too of the buskers like spiel at the beginning. I just kind of wish that maybe like the first part of it had started with quotations and then it ended after when it says like display of man's progress and then does the end quote there. Just to like give us an example of that this is all dialogue and now we're moving on to a narrator that's like, describing the scenes and stuff ahead of us. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just found the switch to from busker's dialogue to narrator very jarring. So I will move on to my next thing. His clothes were tattered and torn, and he had an iron helmet with plumes as red as the curtain. I was leaning, though, and he grasped the pike by his side. So I think it's supposed to be through rather than though. So, and he had an iron helmet with plumes as red as the curtain I was leaning through. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And that is my grammar inquisition. So, Mikey, D stands for evil.
All right. So my grammar inquisition is like review cultists, but sort of in reverse.
Okay.
So
Love it.
after the section where cultists complained about, we actually get quotes to show that it's the
Yes.
busker talking.
Yep.
Now, the issue is that we get quotes on every line. Normally, when you have one person talking, you don't keep opening and closing.
Yeah, I know there was a technique. You might be about to cover this, but I remember there's a technique that Frank Belknap Long used and I'm sure other authors have used in like older like the Cthulhu, the Lovecraft circles and stuff like that, where they leave a quote they leave a starting quote, but they never end the quote if they're going to continue talking and stuff like that. So
yeah, they don't end the quote until the person who's speaking stops talking.
Yeah.
And so the way it's written, it's almost like the busker has multiple heads speaking.
Oh God. I mean, if that suddenly happened through the story, it would not surprise me because this got very surreal very fast.
I don't think that's the case, though.
No. And again, because it's all one person speaking, why not clump it together?
Yeah.
Like, why have these spaces between lines if it's still the same person talking and talking?
Unless he's also like affecting a different voice whenever he says like, look, here we enter the exhibit with all manner of things to catch the eye for youth and old alike. Marvelous detail. See how the people, country folk all shine even in their weary oppression. See how the men gather at the bar, roughshod feet on the sawdust. Da 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 da. Like he just keeps switching. Like he's just got like, and like maybe it's like multiple personality or something like that.
Are you referring to the intro more than the rest of it, though, Mikey? Like how the intro is so spaced out?
Well, there is the intro spaced out, but then there's also like 3 sections after what Culta said.
Yeah.
That are literally quoted out, but it's still the same person talking.
Yeah, it is. It's the busker talking in those 3 quoted lines or quoted paragraphs.
Just saying there's no point to like breaking them up. even if
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah. Or
The,
like,
the only point to break them up is if I guess he's breathing.
yeah. Which okay.
May
Which
need to
that's
do.
what the period is for, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. It could be an entirely long diatribe, but like, yeah, I do definitely agree with you, Mikey. The multiple like quote end quotes don't really need to be there when it's the same person over and over and over again.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like multiple. A lot of these sentences can just be combined into a paragraph, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially at the start where it's a whole bunch of short lines. But the
Mhm.
way I was reading it is just like it's laid out like that because he's trying to like put on a show.
Yeah.
And it's almost like how you would act in a play, you know? Where
Yeah,
you wouldn't
and-
be reading an entire paragraph of stuff necessarily. You're reading lines.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think we were both like kind of in agreement that like it's kind of fine as it is. It's just it needs like a quote, but not the end quote until he's done. Like,
Oh, I know that. I'm not
it's-
talking
it's
about
in-
that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the
Oh, no,
formatting of it.
okay,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I mean there's one thing that could make this better is like add gestures. What is the busker doing while he's saying these things? Because buskers are very animated.
yeah. I'm just imagining jazz hands the entire time. But yeah, he definitely I definitely got the impression that he was like roaming, like kind of moving around the crowd and like presenting like with his hands and stuff at the exhibits that he was like talking about. But like we don't get any of that. Like that's just something I fabricated in my head to like make the scene more interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or maybe he's just new to this whole thing and he's just walking in there and he's just holding a piece of paper and just reading all of this without doing
Get
any
the
like
hell-
any physical
Oh, God.
movement.
Now I'm just imagining him like with the cue cards, like look here as we enter the exhibit with all manner of things to catch the eye for youth and old alike. Marvelous detail. Get the hell off the stage.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, the guild, for that. I think it's either from the guild or it's like one of the guys from the guild did that on like a on like a stage for a convention or something. He had like a card and he was like playing the character, his like nervous character, and he just like get the hell off the stage.
I have not seen that, but I've heard you reference it before. Yes.
So my next thing here is a conjunction junction.
Ooh. And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
It was as if the bloom of her youth had been stolen away, as if viewed in any light other than the increasingly sickly glow of the fire, she would have been beautiful. But there was something about the way she sat there, something to the tautness of her shoulders, the lilt of her head, the way her hair clung around her neck, something that was unspeakably wrong, and that I could neither figure out nor fix. And her eyes, but clearly marked on her pale lips I saw thin, dark lines. It was richly textured, woven thick and full. But the deep fabric was so cold that it almost felt wet to the touch. It was as if it was outdoors, with a noisy crowd gathered perhaps 100 feet away, down below the edge of a raised wooden platform that I looked out over. Finn.
Wow.
So based on the context of everything, the red fabric that he pushes through to like look into the scene is her mouth. Because it's referencing the yarn and then continuing to reference fabric as if it's the yarn.
So she was a like a Muppet, and he just like went through her mouth that was closed off.
Something like that, yeah.
So
Or she's just a normal-sized person, but opened up her mouth big enough for his head to go in, went in, and then inside is this entire scene.
Yeah. Again, love the surrealness.
Weird what happens when you remove context.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason like he does these little strings of sentences is to highlight all the sentences in a story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ands, or buts, because there's always better words.
Yes. And then I suppose it's up to Gamer now.
It is. Let's see. Proving that history is fiction today made fact. So I'm kind of not a fan of the word today, how that sits in that sentence, because you get the same point across without it, because it would just be proving that history is fiction made fact.
Well, it's history is. I think it needs to be there because it's like fiction in the present, like proving that history is present day fiction made fact is what I think it's trying to say with that today in there.
I don't know.
Because like that is like thing. It was like because like yeah like history is just how we write it. Like because the history books are written by the victor kind of. Like it's that kind of motif of like history is written by the victors, and like it's basic like yeah there is a lot of fact like to it. There's truth to history, but there's also like it's recounted in the present about something that happened long ago or in the past. So it's we are recounting it, we're making it up, but at the same time it's based off truth. I think is what it's trying to what that's saying. So I think by removing that today, it kind of it doesn't help the sentence there.
So what you're saying that is that we haven't written books for hundreds of years?
No, we have. I mean,
so a book that's 100 years old is referred to as fiction today, as modern fiction?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But
so I'm right.
All right. You know what? I'm just gonna.
Let me rewrite it here. So, what was it? Proving that history is based on a true story.
Yeah.
Which is also history made fact, or fiction made fact. It's the same thing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Like, if it's trying to say that it's all modern stuff, okay, but I don't know. It seemed weird, the wording of it.
Okay.
And the rewording that you did, Cultist, also made it sound better if that was the intent. It's just the wording of it is weird for me.
I think that's what the issue is. Like, I apologize if I'm like coming off as like standoffish, but it's like I think I just like I confused what you were trying to get at. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. So the whole intro part where he's talking, we already talked about how it should be quoted and all that. But the formatting of it itself is also just weird. We kind of brushed on it, but not too much. Because a lot of them are single lines, but some of them are multi-line squished together. But then immediately goes back into single lines. Like there's no... The formatting of it is... It kind of seems kind of willy-nilly, you know? Like there's no structure behind it. Whether or not it's going to be multi or single sentences one after another. Yeah.
We should point this out. There is also like one of the lines is specifically a different font than the others. Like the
based on the works of yeah.
Like it's almost like so the way I kind of interpreted it, like what was it is like when it's all caps, he's shouting. When it's normal, he's like just speaking in a normal tone, and then the smaller text, it's actually like he's doing it in like a whisper or like a lower voice. So it's like Maximilian Isidore proudly presents, based on the works of Louis Dubois, of course, the Panorama Panoptic.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's saying.
Yeah. Okay. So like it's trying to use the font and the font size and stuff like that to kind of illustrate how the guy is talking or like how the guy is doing his showmanship.
That's not my problem though.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna leave.
Like, here's the first quote that I'm referring to, which is the problem, in my opinion. Before your very eyes, we shall recount those years in which free men. stood up in the face of tyranny. And for liberty, equality, brotherhood, fine virtues, of course, which we know and cherish, gave their lives. Like, the spacing of it is weird. Like, it's in the middle of a sentence. Before your very eyes, we shall recount the years in which free men stood up in the face of tyranny. Like, why?
It's almost like he's a robot.
Loading.
A little bit.
It's because he's yelling at the end, so he's out of breath.
Yeah, it's like,
Perhaps.
before your very eyes, we shall recount those years in which free men stood up in the face of tyranny.
He can yell he can yell as much as he wants in a single sentence. He doesn't have to break it up. And also there's no punctuation there anyway, so it's technically all the same sentence anyway.
Oh my god, you're right. Okay, no, there's some punctuation at the beginning.
That from before your very eyes technically goes all the way down to stalwart
reason?
brothers lived by reason.
Yeah.
It's technically all one sentence if you're gonna be grammar Nazi on it.
And it's just like, we are programmed to receive. Like it's like very, like breaking, almost going Walken a little bit. The way he like how Walken would speak in written form, or how like how Kirk would speak in written form.
Yeah, and if he always spoke like this throughout the entire story, fine. But as soon as it breaks from him talking and it goes into a more standardized structure of paragraphs for dialogue, it's all normal.
Yeah.
So basically, it's weird how there's two different. It's like a different person's talking because it's completely different. Like there needs to be some sort of unity in the way that it's structured, you know?
Yeah, because like if it had been like if it had said something about like his patter changed to like a more like smoothed out, or a little bit more of like a level level like pacing or something like that, rather than his flamboyant introduction, like then maybe I could give it a pass. But yeah, I agree with you. Like suddenly he just switches back to like, goes from like this very flamboyant introduction to like just a regular guy talking again suddenly.
Yeah, actually, he doesn't scream inside, does he?
No, he doesn't. It's all. There's one. Aha! I see. I'm panning through it, and I was like, aha! It does not lead into the biting cold of night, but instead the homely hovel.
Yeah, so maybe the reason that he's screaming so much is because he's outside trying to like see if anyone that isn't already there would be overhearing him and also come by
to attract them into the fold of it.
Yeah, maybe that's also why he's giving space in between it too, for like echo purposes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the world-renowned traveling historical extravaganza for your wonderful exhilaration, for your phantasmagorical edification.
That's why he's like screaming all these like fancy and weird words. To be like, whoa, what's that guy talking about?
Ooh, a phantasmagorical edification. I love those.
But yeah, I'll move on from there.
Okay. I also just like that word. That's one of my favorite lines, I think, in this entire story. It's like phantasmagorical edification.
Yes. But moving on.
Yes.
It's technically part of the same sentence because that's the way that this is. But, and for liberty, equality, brotherhood, fine virtues, of course, which we now know and cherish, gave their lives. So the way that that's structured, it makes it sound like liberty, equality, and brotherhood gave their lives.
Yeah, I get exactly what you're meaning now in this.
Like maybe those that's the names of the free men.
Yeah,
it's probably not.
And it technically still keeps going too. Yeah, and because like it's still also part of the same sentence, and it doesn't stop at gave their lives. It keeps going, so it's like, for in those days the people's enemy led by terror, but our stalwart brothers lived by reason. And then it's like, what? Yeah, the fact that it's broken up is kind of, it's just weird. Like it's not a haiku or anything, right? Like it's not like trying to.
I mean, maybe, but I was like, is he trying to rhyme or something? But no, he's not.
Yeah, because it almost like the way it's done, like it almost reminds me of like a poem or like a song lyric kind of thing, but it's not work. And maybe there is some like a beat to it, but I'm just not picking it up.
Yeah, same.
Also, I'm for some reason I'm not getting like the monorail guy. It's like monorail. Were you sent here by the devil? No, good sir, I'm on the level. Like,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
it's a Simpsons reference.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah,
I don't watch Simpsons.
how dare you?
They're
You
too
South
yellow.
Park. Whoa.
Too much yellow. I can't contain myself.
Yep. You just slip into Fantasyland and want to live there.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll move on. This one's pretty small. When it switches from the speaker and then the description, the only real break is just it's an extra line down instead of it being double spaced, it's triple spaced. Like that's it.
Yep.
Like I guess they thought that that'd be enough, but yeah, if the first part's quoted and that's not, it would be way better. And then the word busker referring to the announcer, is that the right word? Because I googled it and apparently a busker is a street performer. This guy seems like he's more like he's announcing at a circus, not just on the street. So maybe it's meaning barker, which is another word for ringmaster.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, maybe that is it. Because I went with it and just like, oh yeah, busker, like it's a performer. So like this guy's kind of being a performer and stuff in this situation. But I think you're actually right though. I think it should actually be barker.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what he's kind of doing. Is like he's barking the spiel for this carnival. So, and he is kind of the ringleader, it seems, as the story goes on.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's all I got for grammar things.
Okay. So I suppose we'll move on to actual thoughts. Going to start with this one here. This way, under the folds of this tent, you will find we have spared no expense, left no stone unturned, no egg unbroken, to bring you the most modern and advanced display of man's progress. So, and this is in regards to like the guy and like the tent and stuff like that. Man, at some point, Ichor Falls is just gonna have to like ban tent exhibitions just out of the safety for its residents.
Has there been multiple?
Well, do you remember the song and Dance Man
Vaguely?
from like last year, where like it was another like tent situation, like at a town carnival, at a town festival, and like the guy, it was like the tent was like it was some kind of like eldritch entity, or like, and that the man was like the showman was like basically the tongue of it, or like the speech part of it,
yeah,
to like rally people in, and just like. Yeah, it's just like it seems like Ichor Falls is just having really bad situation with like these like tent exhibitions or like carnival tents or like what have you. And it actually kind of got me thinking. It's like that would actually make a decent hook for a game or even a story, like a group within the town that's charged with maybe charged by the town hall to safeguard the town from like supernatural tent hazards. And honestly, at this point, I'm surprised we haven't seen an Ichor Falls story that's centered around a creepy tent revival church, which is another, again, tent-related thing.
Tent revival church?
Revival churches. Like they're basically like they're churches that they're on the road. They go around counties and like go to like rent either rent out space at a like out in a field, or like just find like an empty field out in America and set up a tent where they set up their congregation.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant it was like a church that is all talking about the revival of tents.
No.
Very
It's
confused.
a church that is it's a church. I think it's I can't remember what denomination it is. I think it might be evangelical. But it's a church that like they go on, like they can
it's a nomadic church.
Yeah, basically, yeah, because their church is the tent, and so that's why it's called like a tent revival church.
Yep.
And it's honestly like it's in like Ichor Falls is in that region of Americana that I'm surprised we haven't gotten one of them yet in the story. Like one of these congregational churches shows up in town and is either creepy or falls prey to the creepiness of the town itself.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, like seriously, at this point, like I mean, two have come up so far. I'm sure there are some other ones, but it's like two's too much for me.
I mean, yeah, but
For, like,
think about it. Through the entire history of Ichor Falls, however long in lore that town's been a thing, they've had multiple tents come through and like circuses and
Eat
shit,
people.
and it's been fine.
Have they though?
We only have stories about 2 of them
so far, and that we know of.
Yeah. Like, as weird as all the stories of Ichor Falls, odds are 90% of the time it's a normal town.
90% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah, it's fine. 90% of the time, it's fine every time.
Yeah. I suppose. I just think it would also be interesting to have I like the idea of like a group that's like
I'm not disagreeing with
established
you.
to keep away the tents.
It is rather ridiculous.
And then my next one here, the mannequins were expertly wow. The mannequins were no, wow, I can't say that word. Expertly. Okay, the mannequins were expert.
You okay? Expertly.
Okay, now the word has no meaning. The mannequins were expertly crafted, as he said, and we moved around in the tavern, admiring the attention to detail. The clothes were worn and coarsely made. The lanterns were real candles or oil wicks. Even the patrons' mugs contained some kind of frothed liquid, probably wax, to match the false people. And right as I was reading this part, I was like, I want the mannequins to be creepy. Like, that's going to be the creepiness of the story, is the mannequins.
Yeah.
Like, perhaps they're going to move or shift or on their own and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but mannequins always make it good creepy, spooky fodder. And then we get this. The woman sitting at the middle of the circle of her kin, their waxy skin ruddy in the firelight, their painted bead eyes all fixed on her. And then she blinked. A trick of the light? And then I was like, that point I was like, here we go. We got some creepiness in the mannequins now. And then again, it goes to this. As I swept along, I tried to hold the knitting woman's gaze, but instead I saw only one thing about her, proving the busker's words false. He said she had no thread, and her needles were indeed bare, but clearly marked on her pale lips, I saw thin, dark lines. And at that point, I was like, oh, that, because it took me a second to register what that meant, like what the implication was there. And I was like, oh, so as in she's had her mouth stitched shut. Like, that's where the thread is.
I misread it the first time I read it. And I read it as a thin, dark line. So just like, there was just like some thread hanging out the side of her mouth, like she just ate a freaking toy or something.
Oh, no.
She just ate some yarn.
No. But yeah, also really like how that is insinuated. Like, I really liked that line. It's like, and it just adds to like the weirdness and the creepiness of like the situation of like this woman is in a, like, it almost has like a House of Wax sort of vibe where like she's got like waxy skin that maybe like they've coated her in like a waxy film to kind of make her look like she is a mannequin, but there's actually a person underneath that.
What I don't get though is, if she's potentially covered in wax, why is her mouth sewn shut?
So she can't talk?
But she's covered in wax.
Maybe to keep her the mouth shut so that she won't move her mouth and thus like crumble the wax around her face and then reveal more like of the situation.
But her whole
that also makes
face
a difference.
Can move and your arms can move and stuff.
It makes me wonder, like, is she like maybe under some kind of paralytic or something to like keep her in place?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, where like maybe her mouth is the only thing that can move. I don't know. Yeah, it's still like, it's a disturbing like details, but like at the same time, it also leaves me wondering. It's like, why, like, what exactly is going on here with like her? Because she seems to still be alive, whereas like as we go into the next scene, all the rich like costumed like mannequins are all like all dead people. I almost said dead corpses. And then I said dead corpses. But yeah, so it is interesting. Like I do wonder like what this like. And we're never going to find it out, and we're not supposed to, because that's not, as we find out, this is sort of like not a red herring, but it's sort of like just sort of a lead up to the ultimate weirdness of this entire place. But it is kind of interesting to kind of postulate like what exactly, like how is she being kept there in place in this pose? So I don't know. I might just be rambling at this point.
It's fine.
Okay. And yeah, back onto the rich opulent scene with the dead corpses. They were dead. I was surrounded by posed and perfumed corpses, shuddering, looking anywhere but at the bodies, searching for which curtain wall would lead me back to the knitting room. I tripped over a rough flagstone and passed through a gap in the curtains, slipping into the back rooms before back rooms were really even a thing.
Yeah.
So in all seriousness, though, I really liked this setup, like slipping into the backspace. I think just the idea of slipping into the backspaces of an already weird and creepy exhibit is just really cool. And it only gets creepier as it until the very end, and where the fact that it does get creepier and like more strange about how like what's going on in the back rooms, or in the sort of the back end of this entire establishment of this this carnival thing. It felt rather like Carcosa in a way, like rather like one of those kind of stories as well, because like the character enters this display, this like kind of performance thing, and the performance gets weirder and weirder and more fucked up, and then he like kind of slips into the backstage area, as it were, of this whole like exhibition, and finds something even weirder and creepier and even like kind of like reality bending. So yeah, again, we're just reminded heavily by like Carcosa-esque scenarios or stories with the as the story progressed.
I have a question.
Oh yeah, sure.
You have a note about him being routed, like, because I was thinking about it, like he was like wanting to get out of there and he tripped and fell, which immediately when I read that, I'm like, okay, well, he would have heard that, so he would have noticed, but he didn't follow him or nothing. Then he went through and he got trapped, and then he showed up behind him and monologued on him until he died.
I mean, I assume you're meaning like the busker would have noticed him and
yes,
noticed Nair.
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of hims and he's, but you weren't giving me context as to who you were talking to. I figured out who you were talking about, but you were pulling a grammar or a conjunction junction issue there, Gabriel.
Okay, fine. Regardless, the barker, because he's a barker.
Yes.
Now that I'm thinking about it, when he was saying at the end, he being the barker was saying at the end that he made all this for him. It's entirely possible now, thinking back, in that scene where the barker was in the expensive area, the expensive room.
Yep.
He was saying, or rather, Nair was saying that the barker was sort of coming near him and he was kind of moving away. And as he was moving away, he tripped and fell. So it's entirely possible that the barker literally rounded him up to quote unquote make him quote unquote accidentally fall in the right spot, right where he wanted him to go. Yeah.
Like once the barker like noticed that he was in the know of what was going on, he was like kind of went into like predatory mode. It's like, all right, I'm going to start approaching him in this angle so that he'll go the opposite way because he's human and he's going to want to go away from me because he thinks this is all fucked up and weird.
Yeah.
Go and then he'll trip on that flagstone that I've had raised for like just an occasion.
Yeah, like in every single room there's a trap that he can funnel people into if he needs to.
Yeah. Or hell, maybe if this is something more supernatural afoot, maybe the flagstone raised it by itself.
Ooh.
Slightly.
Yeah.
Just enough for him to like trip over it.
Mm-hmm. Possible.
Like the barker's just like, you're my house now.
Yeah, you can continue now.
So next thing here is like the bottom of it hung past the frame of the hole, and I could not draw it apart properly with my hands. Bright light and cold air streamed through when I did, overwhelming my sight. My eyes watered, and I closed them against the brightness, but pushed my head through the curtain, squinting to try and see properly. I read this and I was like, God, that is such a bad idea. Like, I hope you weren't too attached to your head.
He's not going to be.
And then I read ahead. I continued reading and I got this. As my vision cleared, it was astounding. It was as if I was outdoors with a noisy crowd gathered perhaps 100 feet away down below the edge of a raised wooden platform that I looked out over. And at that, I was like, oh, wow. I was right. He is going to lose his head. Viva la revolution. Like, he somehow plopped his head into a guillotine in revolutionary France? Okay. Like, I immediately kind of like realized the situation as soon as like that was described. Like, without them even saying like that, oh, they were speaking weird, or like that like there was a guy next to him with like that was like looking down at him with contempt and stuff like that. It's like, oh no, yeah, they're in he's poked his head through a guillotine. Also gotta say, this took a turn I was not expecting. Like, I thought the horror of the story was going to be focused on the mannequins in the tents, but then we get this head-sized portal in the back rooms between the curtains to the guillotines of France. Like, way to subvert expectations. And I say that in a positive way because I was not expecting it, but it wasn't unwanted, or it wasn't it wasn't annoying to me.
One thing that confused me is when the doorway is being described, it's saying it's an empty doorway, and the bottom half of it is like, I don't know if it's red or not. It's probably red. The red silk, whatever the hell, fabric that he can pull aside. So if it's a doorway, isn't it the width of a doorway? As in, and if it's a doorway and the bottom half of it is like the red fabric, what's the top half? Is it wide open?
So I kind of assumed that it was actually just a door with a hole in the middle of it, like at ground level, or not at ground level, but like at a level where he had to like kneel down and then poke his head through.
At first, I thought it was a solid door with a doggy door in it with red drapes on it. That's what I first thought.
And he was what's Marv and what's the other guy's name in Home Alone?
I don't remember.
The Wet Bandits. But yeah, like when he's sticking his head through the doggy door.
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I thought. But then I reread it and it says, path turned sharply, and my way forward ended in a wooden wall with 4 tall steps leading up to a bare door frame. In the lower half of the door, so it's a door frame that's up against a wall, I guess. Yeah. So the entire wall is wood, but there's a door frame on the wooden wall, and the bottom half of the door was a small square area at eye level to me that had been cut out and edged by gold trim with a thick red.
You know what that is?
What?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just realized what that door frame is. It's not actually a door frame.
It's the shape of the guillotine?
Yeah. It is 100% the shape of the guillotine. And that's what and then the portal, the little porthole that's like that he sticks his head through is the hole that you stick the person's head through for the guillotine at the bottom of it. It was on the side of, it was next to the wall.
Guillotines are really tall, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, this again, like I don't know, like maybe he just didn't realize how tall it was. But it is, because the story likes to like describe things and not tell you what it is, because like it want like that savors that, like when you have that revelation, it's like, oh, that's what's about to happen. That's what that was that he described. But yeah, I hope that's actually like what it is, because like that is honestly, I like that idea of like him just like describe, oh, what's this weird door like with like just a door frame and like there's a hole in the middle. Oh, that's not a door. I mean, it's kind of a door for your head
Yeah.
to be separated from your body. But yeah,
You can continue.
okay. And then this is actually my last actual thought here. So the quote here is like, "L'amour, l'amour," howled the crowd. From above, there was a whisper of a finger on a wine glass, the sound of something very sharp falling very fast. So I really like that description of the sound of a guillotine coming down, the whisper of a finger on a wine glass. Like I can audibly visualize that. I know that sounded weird, but I can audibly I can hear that. I can hear the sound that makes, and that sounds kind of like a sharp bladed instrument shinking down shinking down the framework of a guillotine.
Fortunately for me,
Oh.
that sound gave me a different sort of sound visual, and it's not of a guillotine at all.
Okay, well, I liked it.
That's
so
fair.
I'm that's where my actual thought is. So I commend the story for that descriptor.
I personally have not heard a guillotine, so I can't say one way or another what it sounds like.
You haven't checked out Corridor Digital's guillotine channel?
I have
where
actually.
they
I
built
forgot about that.
they built a guillotine, and then they set up a channel so they could like try and gather like YouTube money to like buy beers at the end of the week.
Yeah. Do they keep doing that?
They stopped after like I think they did like they went for like I think maybe 10 videos, and then they stopped, and then they decommissioned the guillotine.
How dare.
But yeah, no, it's still out there. I think on YouTube somewhere, like their guillotine channel, where they just like cut. They see like what they can cut. Like they've got like fruit, like whole like bushels of spaghetti, of dry spaghetti, stuff like that. But yeah, that's gonna be my actual thoughts for this story. So, Mikey, D stands for evil. What do you got?
All right. So my actual thought here is that I really thought the mannequins were going to play a bigger part, like cultists thought. And I was actually going for the trope where the curious protagonist becomes part of the display.
Yep. I mean, he kind of does.
What we got was
it was just a different display. You know, the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my note here is that what we got was he finds a hole in a door and sticks his head through and is beheaded.
Yep.
And it's a magical guillotine that transports your head back to the French Revolution.
Yep.
So, like, to me, the whole guillotine stuff sort of came out of nowhere.
I mean, to argue your point, it did lead up with like the whole exhibit itself is basically about like the French Revolution and like how it got started. Was like the poor being oppressed by the rich, and then the poor rising up against the rich, and then we get to the guillotine part.
Yeah, and
that part's not even part of the exhibit though, at all.
Yeah, that is odd. Like, yeah, that is the counterpoint.
Yeah. Now, if there was actually some character development for Nair,
yeah,
and it was established that he was royalty,
yeah, or like maybe he is like Nair Antoinette. So it's the only person I can think of that's been guillotined is Marie Antoinette. But yeah, like maybe like his ancestors were Antoinettes, and so this tent revival or this tent exhibit found him.
Yeah,
to teach his family a lesson. So
like that would in my mind, have tied the guillotine to the story.
Yeah.
Because he's part royalty. He's going along. He gets to the portion where there's dead royalty. He freaks out, goes into the back rooms, and then gets his head chopped off.
Yeah, he's part of the bourgeoisie that and the rich that need to be guillotined.
Yeah.
Or like he has like his family hasn't paid enough, or hasn't paid enough. Like I think the story would have helped if we had actually gotten like maybe a name of some kind for the character, like Anton, maybe even like go with like a French sounding name, like for the first name, and then like have the Barker like at the end like give us his full name, and it's like, oh shit, he's a descendant of one of the people that got beheaded, and they found him again. They found the family again, the ones that escaped.
Yeah, that to me would have made a lot more sense than what we got.
Okay, I can get behind that. Also, to what you were saying about giving a little bit more character development, like maybe give us a little bit more backstory about Nair, where like maybe he's like maybe he is like in the present, like maybe he's not even just like that he's like related to the people that were guillotined, but also like maybe he is sort of like a richer or like higher class person of the town that happens to be going into checking out this carnival exhibit with the rest of the rabble rousers, or the rest of the rabble kind of thing. Like give him kind of his personality, make him a little bit more like snarky, or about like we like kind of give us a reason why the Barker chose him other than just happenstance.
Yeah, and that's into my actual thoughts.
Okay. Then Gamer.
Okay. We'll start with something you brought up earlier a little bit. Phantasmagorical edification, which are two words that I did not know, and they sound neat, so I looked them up. And phantasmagorical is an alternative spelling of phantasmagorical with a PH at the start, so it's way cooler.
Yep.
And that is an alternative form of phantasmagoric, which means quick changes in light brightness and color, or a dreamlike blurring of real and imaginary.
Yep.
And then
so illusionary kind of like stuff.
And then edification is instruction or improvement of a person morally or intellectually. Apparently.
Yeah. Big old fancy words.
Yes. I just like that the version of phantasmagorical we got is an alternative form of an alternative form of the word. Yeah.
Yo, dog, I heard you liked alternative form, so I gave you an alternative form for your alternative form.
I dig a little deep for that.
Yeah.
And this line here says, the other people in the room were listening with rapt attention to the busker. I'm going to call him a Barker. To the Barker.
Yeah.
However, a few paragraphs earlier, it was saying the crowd was beginning to fidget as the man spoke, partially from the cramped surroundings, but I thought also from a growing lack of interest in hearing the spiel. So are they getting bored or are they enthralled? Which is it?
Maybe they started getting bored, and then when they went to the next room, they got excited again. They got
perhaps.
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah.
They could also have been uncomfortable because like it was a tight space, and it was also he was talking about like the oppressed poor and stuff like that. So maybe even this is like kind of this is a hint that the crowd is of a higher class and don't feel uncomfortable about like when discussing about the poorer classes.
That could be it too. All right.
I mean, I'm just like I'm just trying to like play devil's advocate as to why it's there or why that's there. But yeah,
it could be there in the subtext, in the words that we don't read.
We know how much you love subtext.
And then we get to the part where Nair sticks his head through and he sees the things, right? And he's at like knee height to this knight that's holding a weapon. So the first thing I thought was he was on a chopping block, not a guillotine. But before that, You just put your bend you over on a block and just chop your head off with an axe or something. Because the first thing you see is a knight standing there with a weapon. So I imagined what he was trying to say is he's going to use the pike to decapitate him. Which is kind of weird because a pike is basically a spear that's over 10 feet long.
And they generally don't have a blade at the end, or it's it's just like a sharpened end.
Sometimes
right?
they're actually bladed, but
Okay.
But regardless, it's like trying to decapitate someone with a spear.
It's like, all right, so I'm going to decapitate you. Let me just perforate your neck in a line, like making stamps.
Yeah. Rapid fire. But considering it's a long pole on it, he'd be missing a lot. There'd be some wavering in it, so he'd have to hit him 5 or 6 times with chops to try to get through his neck.
It would not be a clean death.
To quote D&D, maybe it was a Vorpal spear.
Oh my god.
I don't know what a Vorpal spear is.
So a Vorpal is the effect to basic. It comes from actually Alice in Wonderland and the Jabberwocky and stuff. The Vorpal blade that goes snicker snack and it off with your head. So it's basically a Vorpal effect on a weapon. Is it doesn't matter if it's a piercing weapon; it's going to decapitate.
So you put it on a hammer and it decapitates.
And yep. Yep.
Okay. Weird.
I don't even think I don't, Mikey. You're a little bit more versed in that. Does it have to be near the head, or could you just poke somebody with a Vorpal stick and their head just lops off magically?
Yeah. As long as it's a critical hit, yep.
So you can critical hit with
impale somebody and then their head just goes flying.
You could have a Vorpal baseball bat and just get a critical hit whacking him in the butt cheeks and his head pops off.
Yep. Or it's you could have a Vorpal effect put on your shoe, stamp somebody in the toe, it's ow, my foot, and their head pops off.
That is goddamn ridiculous. Magic, man. How's it work?
Yeah, yep, exactly. That at that point, if I threw that into a Cthulhu game, it'd be roll sand.
Yeah, a little bit.
Person just got so you could with the Vorpal. We're a little off topic, but you could get a Vorpal shoes or Vorpal boots and kicks and punt somebody in the groin. So basically kicking them so hard in the nuts that their head pops off.
I'll keep that in mind for future games, for future character ideas.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, long story short, the pike made it weird. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be a guillotine now that you describe all this, but if it wasn't, and he was describing the weapon, I feel like instead of pike, the better word would be halberd or just generic a polearm, which is basically a metal or sometimes wood, but a spear with a huge axe head on it as well, so you can chop real good with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I thought it was just a weapon coming down is the sound, because when I think of a guillotine sliding down, it's almost sounding like a weapon going in a sheath, because it's metal against metal, sliding metal.
Is it always metal? I thought it was metal and then on between
or
two
metal on
pieces
wood,
of wood.
But regardless, it's metal sliding on something. When I think of just a blade being swung in movies and shit like that, it has a weird sort of sound, kind of like the top of a glass, where it's just this weird effect. I don't even know how to describe the sound, but
it's a whooshing sound.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting because I recently watched something where somebody described that whooshing sound that when they added into in post and stuff in videos, and most of the time it's like a whooshing of air, but they actually found that was not as satisfying as when you're kind of just go taking a part of your a piece of cloth, even your shirt and stuff like that, and just kind of wiping your hand against it, so that actually creates a much more impactful whooshing sound for blades and stuff. is using like a cloth sound. But
Weird.
yeah.
But either way, that's the sort of sound that it made in my mind. So because a weapon was just described a little bit before that, I put the two together. So my last one's just in regards to the ending, where I didn't really get why the Barker apparently did this entire thing just to get Nair killed. We kind of brushed on that as to why it could happen. And that'd be nice if anything was said in regards to that.
Yeah.
Although the other way to think of it is he's made this attraction, and it's meant to capture people and get them killed and give their heads to the past somehow for some reason, because that's what happens apparently. But it's entirely possible he just says that to anyone he captures just because he's being dramatic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's just like,
I did all this for you. Meanwhile, like yesterday, he caught someone else. He's like, I did all this for you.
Yeah. Maybe the girl in the center of that room. Like maybe this is like it was a different like thing. How he trapped her. It was like, I did this all for you. It's like, just like every time he does it, he just like he wants to make his victims feel special.
Yeah. It's nice of him.
Yeah, he's a considerate sociopath or psychopath.
Right? Yeah, that's the end of my notes.
Okay. Then I suppose we'll move on to final thoughts. So, yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed too much. I still really like the story. I think it was a cool, surreal little journey through this aptly called history lesson, because it was a history lesson, basically, like starting from the top. Like at the end of the day, the Barker, or the Busker, whatever you want to call him. I honestly, I'm with you, Gamer. I think it should be Barker now, but it was a history lesson. He was kind of going through like the history of like the French Revolution for some reason, and I think part of maybe even like a little bit of what I like about the story is the fact that we don't get to know all the context of what's going on. Though, to Mikey's credit, I do think that it would be nice to have a little bit more of a reason why this is all happening to poor Nair. Or maybe not so poor Nair. Maybe that's the reason why it's all happening to him, is that he's not
rich.
Poor. Yeah, maybe this is like all just maybe this is all just a ploy to kill rich folk,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't entirely. Anyway,
Choose your next words wisely.
Yeah. So, bottom line, I do actually. I'm going to still recommend this story because I thought it was a cool, surreal, creepy journey that subverted my expectation. Again, I thought it was going to be mannequin stuff focused, but then it turned out that was just part of it, and it was like kind of more. It got weirder as it went on. I like that how it got weirder. So I will recommend it for that. Also, Ichor Falls really needs to stamp down on tent exhibitions and carnivals like that before it gets too out of hand.
Every time they show up, something horrible happens, but they keep letting them in.
Yeah. God.
Also, in regards to him doing this to get back at rich folk, wouldn't he himself, the Barker, be rich to pay for all of this?
Not necessarily. I mean, carnies and carnivals and stuff generally don't make a lot of money, but they just have like enough to get by and to keep going, and like basically enough for like to have like to survive and live off of like the proceeds and stuff of that, and then like the fuel to get to the next location.
I suppose that's sort of true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be my recommendations. So, Mikey, these stands for evil. Take it away.
My opinion hasn't changed.
Fair.
I really would have liked it if it had gone more with the mannequin and Nair becoming a mannequin.
Yeah.
But sadly, that wasn't the case.
As a quick thing, what if like, yeah, he poked his head through, and it was actually the next exhibit, after the rich people.
That also would have been good.
his face froze in place, like he could feel his face freezing in place as he like went through it, and like that's how. And then like he like felt like he saw like a mirror somewhere in the room that so he could see or see his reflection somewhere in the room, and saw that he looked waxy. So like by putting his head through the guillotine hole, it showed that he was like it actually like changed him like supernaturally.
I said that's what I thought they were gonna go with, but then when all the people around were like speaking French and like he was clearly outside in the real world, I was very confused.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless out what he was seeing, like the French Revolution stuff, that's all like what he's seeing, but like on the outside in the next tent room over, the crowd has moved into this section and they are seeing the crowd looking on at this guy on a pedestal at a guillotine next to a dummy that's like of a guy with a pike and stuff like that. So it's like he's become part of the exhibit, but this is what maybe this is what the mannequins see, like that are all like people, right? Like they see the world more lively or more like augmented to the reality of like their exhibit.
Would there be multiple
But unfortunately, we don't.
Sorry, would there be multiple Barkers if that's the case? Because there's a Barker right behind him, holding him down and monologuing.
Perhaps the Barker is a supernatural entity, and so he split himself
like a guillotine.
That's his shadow form.
Split himself.
Yes, yes, exactly. Or maybe he's like throwing his voice supernaturally, even more like supernaturally. So like it's just like his spirit, like a spirit form behind the guy, or like it's the Barker's will behind him, holding him down, while the actual Barker, the physical Barker, is going on his spiel with the rest of the crowd.
That's also surprisingly plausible.
Mm-hmm. Also, I kind of want that, but
I would have liked it a lot better if it was shown or somehow explained that he had become the next exhibit.
Yeah.
And that it had become a wax figure, or his face had become waxed, or something along those lines would have made this for me. But it doesn't.
Yeah. Back to reality. Yeah.
So, yeah, that, and like I said, it would be nice to have a bit more backstory to find out for sure that Nair is of rich blood.
Yeah.
Which
does he deserve this fate or not?
Yeah. Or make him more of an asshole or something.
Yeah.
Like that maybe he pushes over one of the wax figures or something.
Yeah.
Like, but as it stands, I'm still not recommending.
Okay. And then we have Gamer.
So my read through it was like okay and everything, but the entire story was very predictable. Like, at least for me personally, you guys were kind of the same way, it sounds like. Like when we went in and there's mannequins there, I was immediately like, there's no way that this is going to be a mundane run through of a museum exhibit. Something's going to happen.
It's literally a creepypasta. It's an Ichor Falls story. Those mannequins ain't right.
Yeah, exactly. So that twist was like, what a shock. I saw it. And then, because I figured as soon as I saw mannequins, I'm like, okay, those mannequins are going to be actual people. Like, they have to be. That or they'll be puppeted or something like what you said before, Cultist, which they kind of were.
Mm-hmm.
Being people, that is. And then as soon as he stuck his head through the fabric and saw the environment, I was like, okay, he's on a chopping block / guillotine. And that was true as well. So both of the big twists were very easy to see coming, unfortunately. Yeah. And as we've discussed, there's a lot of ways that they could be changed to fit into the story a lot more. Like the whole thing with the mannequins is technically pointless because it has nothing to do with the end.
It kind of primes the end, like, because it's setting up both the like what the theme of this whole place is like the oppression of the poor at the hands of the rich and stuff, and then the rise up to the revolution. So then we get to the guillotine stuff. Okay, so that was the natural progression of that, and also the fact that the mannequins are actually people in either trapped or dead kind of primes it for like, okay, something fucking weird and creepy is afoot here, but it's not the actual focus of the creepiness of the story. There's something else afoot here that we're just not seeing, or that our narrator isn't seeing because he doesn't have the full context.
You know what I'm thinking of this like?
We would.
I'm thinking about this murderer / supernatural being as a Star Wars planet, where he is one climate. That's all he is one climate.
Yep. Yeah, he's a French Revolution planet.
But no, he can do the beheadings. He can desiccate corpses and turn them into statues. He can keep people alive and keep them as statues. I say statues, but I mean mannequins. But I'm saying he's a varied murderer. And
yeah, it's still French planet, because what is mannequin but a French word pulled into English?
I mean, a lot of words are, but yes, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is, I'm giving him a hard time. We're giving the Barker a hard time because we're saying like the guillotine stuff's out of Left Town, which we never actually said, but I'm saying it now. Yeah, it's kind of out of Left Town, but that's only if we're thinking of him as a one-trick pony, which he's not necessarily.
No, he's doing a lot.
He's a busy guy. So yeah, I can't give it too much shit on that, I guess, but just a lot of the stuff was too predictable, and we didn't really get any closure on things at all.
I mean, that is horror a lot of the time. Like, yeah.
But yes, some of the things that we thought up, like just to show that it's more interconnected, like he's become part of the next exhibit, that would be a lot better because it keeps everything connected. Like he's still killing people in various ways or torturing them or stuff like that, but it's all to a theme, which seems to be his thing anyways. Because he's doing this whole thing through a museum, but then all of a sudden it's not a museum at all. Yeah.
Suddenly it's a museum in a very more literal sense in that you are literally taking somebody back in time to a degree.
Yeah.
Or displaying something historical, but like for reals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either way, like the more I've been thinking about this, the more that's kind of just bugged me how it doesn't flow very well. And with the grammar stuff, with the weird spacing at the start and the no cut in between it going from his speech outside to narration, stuff like that, it's kind of bugged me more and more. So I was at a partial. I'm going to go to a low partial now because it does need a lot of work, honestly. Not work that it can be done, obviously, like to tie it all in, but it has to be done for it to be more enjoyable because it just kind of left me more confused. And I had to have this recording with you guys to fully understand what's going on.
You had to have the process.
Yeah.
Once again, like to repeat, we got there.
So yeah, I'll change from a partial to a low partial. There's still something there. It just needs a little bit of work.
Yeah. All right. So a recommendation, a non-recommendation, and then a low partial recommendation is what I'm hearing from all of us. Because as much as like I'm not changing my opinion.
More than one,
but that also was like, please do. By the way, no, like I hear what you guys are saying, but I still enjoyed the read, so I can't, in good conscience, just like say I wouldn't recommend the story because I did enjoy the read, and I think anybody who likes me, who's like me. Anybody who likes me should anybody who's like me or like-minded, I think might enjoy this. But again, like, and similarly, like whoever is like-minded to Mikey may not like this, or whoever is like-minded to Gamer is going to be indecisive about whether or not they like this.
Yeah.
But again, that's the point of our different opinions on the show and some of that. So, yeah, I do like the ideas that we've proposed here, but like as it is, yeah. So.
We're, of course, always biased to our own ideas that we come up with.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to need a t-shirt. Someone's like, it's almost like we're different people. Like that needs to be, the slogan needs to be put on a shirt.
Probably should.
But yeah, so whoever's listening to this, if you still haven't read the story at this point, do with our opinions as you will. And that will be this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. You can also send us messages on Twitter. Mikey is at the E stands for evil. The Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow, but without that W at the end because his name is very long.
Yeah.
Just need a guillotine to cut that name in half.
I'll be the gamer. Just in yellow.
The gamer it.
Yeah, sometimes when I put that name into video games, it does just cut off the end, like at random intervals.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just like the gamer in. Like, oh great.
Oh boy, the gamer in the gamera.
Yeah, pretty close.
And I'm at Review Cultist on Twitter. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah. And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon, look up Al Dente Rigor Mortis, and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tier with special episodes, early access, extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you guys immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it would be like screaming into the void, slipping our heads into a porthole to the French Revolution, only to get our heads lopped off.
Then we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd be dead.
Yeah. And if you didn't write these stories and post them online or share them on a submitted section of Ichor Falls website, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd literally have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigor Mortis. Sleep well.